Feeling lost, overwhelmed, or just plain stuck? Ever wonder how long you can endure the silence, the waiting, the unanswered prayers? Picture this, a warrior, weary and burdened, crying out into the void, "How long, O Lord? Will you forget me forever?" That's the raw, unfiltered heart of Psalm 13. Imagine standing on the edge of despair, yet holding on to a thread of hope. Does that resonate with you? What if I told you there's a blueprint for navigating these dark valleys, a way to transform anguish into trust, pain into praise? Stay with us, because we're unraveling the secrets of a soul in distress, finding solace in the divine refuge. Ready to dive in? Let's go. Attributed to King David, Psalm 13 offers us a deeply personal glimpse into a moment of raw emotion and spiritual struggle. Picture David, the revered king and warrior, finding himself in a period of profound anguish and despair. It's almost as if he's pulling back the curtain on his inner turmoil, giving us a front-row seat to his vulnerabilities. The psalm isn't just a historical artifact, it's a window into the human condition, showing that even the mightiest among us can feel lost and abandoned at times. David, who is traditionally celebrated for his unwavering faith and monumental victories, here reveals a side that's more relatable to many of us. He's not in the royal courts or on the battlefield, he's in a dark night of the soul, grappling with feelings that seem all too familiar. The context of the psalm suggests that it was written during one of those low points in his life, possibly when he was fleeing from his enemies or dealing with personal betrayal. This isn't the triumphant David who slayed Goliath, this is a man questioning his place in the world and his relationship with God. Understanding the context helps us appreciate the depth of David's lament. He's not just a distant biblical figure, he's a person who faced real-life challenges and emotions. His words resonate because they come from a place of genuine suffering. The psalm serves as a reminder that even those closest to God can experience moments of doubt and despair. It humanizes David, making his struggles and his faith journey something we can all relate to. Before we dive into today's content, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you enjoy our videos and want to see more exciting content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It's the best way to support us and stay updated on all the new meditations and videos we share. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for being part of our community, and now, enjoy the video. Psalm 13 is beautifully structured into 6 verses, which can be neatly divided into 3 distinct sections: lament, supplication, and trust. Each section flows seamlessly into the next, almost like the stages of a heartfelt conversation with God. In the first 2 verses, David's lament is palpable. He's not holding back, he's laying bare his soul, asking, "How long, O Lord?" It's as if he's been bottling up these emotions and finally finds the courage to voice them. Moving into the supplication in verses 3 and 4, David shifts from expressing his anguish to making a fervent plea for help. Here, he asks God to consider and answer him, to give light to his eyes lest he sleep the sleep of death. This transition is crucial because it shows that David's lament isn't aimless. He's not just wallowing in his sorrow, he's actively seeking God's intervention. This section is a powerful reminder that it's okay to ask for help, to reach out when we're at our lowest. The final section, comprising verses 5 and 6, is where the tone shifts dramatically. Despite the intensity of his earlier despair, David ends on a note of trust and hope. He declares his faith in God's steadfast love and sings of the Lord's bountiful dealings with him. This resolution is what makes Psalm 13 so compelling. It doesn't leave us in the depths of despair but lifts us up with a message of enduring faith. The structure of the psalm, with its progression from lament to supplication to trust, mirrors the journey many of us take in our moments of crisis. In the opening verses of Psalm 13, David's feeling of abandonment is strikingly evident. He repeats the question, "How long?" 4 times, each repetition adding weight to his sense of desolation. It's as if he's been waiting and waiting, and now he's finally voicing his frustration and confusion. This rhetorical question isn't just a cry of impatience, it's a profound expression of his emotional state. David feels as though God has turned his face away, leaving him alone in his suffering. This feeling of abandonment is something many people can relate to, regardless of their religious beliefs. It's that gut-wrenching sensation of being left to fend for oneself, of feeling invisible and unheard. David's repeated questioning highlights the depth of his despair and his yearning for a response. He's not just questioning God's timing, he's questioning his presence. It's a raw and honest portrayal of spiritual desolation, a moment where the divine seems distant and unresponsive. Yet, even in his feeling of abandonment, David's questions are directed at God. This in itself is a testament to his underlying faith. He hasn't turned away, he's reaching out, even if it's in frustration and sorrow. This duality of feeling abandoned yet still seeking connection is what gives Psalm 13 its emotional depth. It captures the complexity of human faith, where doubt and belief can coexist, and where questioning God can be an act of deep, albeit troubled, faith. As we move forward in Psalm 13, the theme of anguish and suffering becomes even more pronounced. David's words are laden with a palpable sense of internal turmoil. He speaks of having sorrow in my heart all the day, painting a vivid picture of relentless emotional pain. This isn't a fleeting moment of sadness, it's a persistent, gnawing agony that consumes him. David's anguish is multifaceted. It's not just about feeling abandoned by God, it's also about grappling with his own internal struggles. The phrase, sorrow in my heart, suggests a deep, personal anguish that goes beyond external circumstances. It's as if David is battling with his own thoughts and emotions, caught in a cycle of despair. This portrayal of suffering is incredibly relatable. Many people have experienced those dark periods where it feels like the weight of the world is pressing down on them, and there's no relief in sight. But David's description of his suffering doesn't stop at his emotional state. He also speaks of his enemies triumphing over him, adding another layer to his distress. This external threat compounds his internal anguish, creating a sense of being besieged on all fronts. It's a powerful reminder that suffering often comes in multiple forms, both internal and external, and can feel overwhelming. In verses 3 and 4, David transitions from expressing his anguish to making a direct plea for help. This shift is crucial, as it shows that despite his deep despair, he hasn't given up hope. He's reaching out to God, asking for intervention. David's plea is urgent and heartfelt. He asks God to consider and answer me, highlighting his desperate need for a response. David's request is specific. He asks for light to his eyes, lest he sleep the sleep of death. This metaphorical language underscores the severity of his situation. He's on the brink, teetering between life and death, and he's pleading for God's intervention to pull him back from the edge. The phrase, light to my eyes, suggests a restoration of hope and vitality, a rekindling of the spark that's been extinguished by his suffering. This section of the psalm is a powerful example of how to ask for help in times of distress. David's plea is honest and direct. He's not sugarcoating his situation or pretending that everything is okay. He's laying it all out before God, expressing his deep need for divine intervention. This raw honesty is something that many people can learn from. It's a reminder that it's okay to be vulnerable, to admit when we're struggling, and to ask for help. One of the most striking aspects of David's plea is his fear of death. He speaks of his enemies saying, I have prevailed over him, and his foes rejoicing because he is shaken. This fear of being overcome by his enemies adds a tangible sense of danger to his emotional and spiritual anguish. David isn't just worried about his own suffering, he's also deeply concerned about the triumph of his adversaries. This fear of death and defeat is a powerful motivator for David's plea. It's not just about avoiding pain, it's about preserving his dignity and legacy. He's fearful that his enemies will celebrate his downfall, adding insult to injury. This fear speaks to a broader human concern, the desire to be remembered well and to avoid the scorn of others. It's a reminder that our struggles are often about more than just personal pain, they're also about our place in the world and how we're perceived by others. David's fear of death also highlights the precariousness of his situation. He's on the brink, feeling as though he's teetering on the edge of a precipice. This sense of imminent danger adds urgency to his plea and underscores the depth of his despair. It's a vivid illustration of the human condition, where fear and hope often coexist in a delicate balance. Despite the intense anguish and fear that permeate the first part of the psalm, David's tone shifts dramatically in the final verses. This shift from despair to trust is one of the most compelling aspects of Psalm 13. David declares his trust in God's steadfast love, saying, "But I have trusted in your steadfast love, my heart shall rejoice in your salvation." This declaration of trust is profound. It's not based on his current circumstances, which are clearly dire. Instead, it's rooted in his faith in God's character and past faithfulness. David's trust is an act of will, a conscious decision to place his hope in God's love and salvation, even when everything around him suggests otherwise. This ability to trust in the midst of suffering is a powerful testament to the resilience of faith. David's trust is also forward-looking. He speaks of rejoicing in God's salvation, indicating his belief that deliverance is not only possible but certain. This forward-looking faith is a source of strength and comfort, allowing David to endure his present suffering with the hope of future redemption. It's a reminder that faith often involves looking beyond our immediate circumstances to the bigger picture of God's plan for our lives. The shift in tone from despair to trust is one of the most striking features of Psalm 13. This change is not just a literary device, it's a reflection of David's spiritual journey. He starts in a place of deep anguish and ends with a declaration of faith and trust. This progression mirrors the emotional and spiritual journey that many people go through in times of crisis. The change of tone also serves as a powerful reminder that feelings of despair and trust can coexist. David doesn't deny his suffering or pretend that everything is okay. Instead, he acknowledges his pain and fear while also affirming his trust in God's love and faithfulness. This duality is a hallmark of genuine faith, which often involves holding on to hope and trust even in the darkest of times. The change of tone also highlights the transformative power of prayer. Through his heartfelt plea and expression of anguish, David is able to move from a place of despair to a place of trust. This transformation is a testament to the power of honest, vulnerable communication with God. It's a reminder that prayer isn't just about asking for help, it's also about finding strength and hope in the midst of our struggles. David's journey in Psalm 13 is a powerful illustration of how faith can endure amid suffering. Despite his deep anguish and fear, David's faith remains unshaken. His trust in God's love and faithfulness is a source of strength and hope, allowing him to endure his suffering with a sense of purpose and meaning. David's faith is not passive, it's active and dynamic. It involves a conscious decision to trust in God's character and promises, even when his circumstances suggest otherwise. This active faith is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of trust in God. David's faith amid suffering also highlights the importance of perspective. By focusing on God's steadfast love and salvation, David is able to look beyond his immediate circumstances to the bigger picture of God's plan for his life. This perspective gives him the strength to endure his suffering with hope and resilience. The final verses of Psalm 13 are a beautiful expression of anticipated thanksgiving. David speaks of singing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with him. This expression of thanksgiving is not based on his current circumstances, which are still dire. Instead, it's rooted in his faith in God's future deliverance. David's anticipated thanksgiving is a powerful act of faith. It's a declaration of trust in God's promises and a commitment to praise Him even before the deliverance has come. This forward-looking faith is a source of strength and hope, allowing David to endure his present suffering with the expectation of future redemption. This anticipated thanksgiving also serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of gratitude in times of suffering. By focusing on God's past faithfulness and future promises, David is able to find a sense of peace and hope in the midst of his struggles. It's a reminder that gratitude is not just about thanking God for what He has done, it's also about trusting Him for what He will do. Psalm 13 is rich in theological relevance, offering profound insights into the relationship between human suffering and divine providence. David's journey from despair to trust is a powerful illustration of the resilience of faith and the transformative power of prayer. It highlights the importance of honest, vulnerable communication with God and the role of trust in enduring times of crisis. The psalm also underscores the importance of perspective in times of suffering. By focusing on God's steadfast love and future deliverance, David is able to find strength and hope in the midst of his struggles. This perspective is a powerful reminder that faith often involves looking beyond our immediate circumstances to the bigger picture of God's plan for our lives. Psalm 13 also speaks to the importance of perseverance in faith. Despite his deep anguish and fear, David's trust in God's love and faithfulness remains unshaken. This perseverance is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of faith. The relevance of Psalm 13 extends far beyond its historical context. Its themes of suffering, despair, and trust are universal, resonating with people across different cultures and time periods. For those who feel abandoned or are grappling with deep anguish, Psalm 13 offers a model for how to express these feelings while still holding on to faith. In today's world, where many are facing unprecedented challenges and uncertainties, Psalm 13 serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of honest, vulnerable communication with God. It encourages people to express their true feelings, to ask for help, and to trust in God's love and faithfulness, even in the darkest of times. The psalm also underscores the importance of perspective and perseverance in times of crisis. By focusing on God's past faithfulness and future promises, individuals can find strength and hope to endure their present struggles. And as we reflect on the heartfelt words of Psalm 13, let's take a moment to ask ourselves, how often do we feel like David, crying out in our moments of deepest despair, asking God, how long? How often do we find ourselves in the midnight of our soul, longing for the dawn of His presence? But remember, just like David, we are not alone. Even in his anguish, David turns his plea into a prayer, and his prayer into a song of trust. He reminds us that God's love is unfailing, His salvation is certain, and His timing is perfect. So, as you go about your day, I challenge you to find your own way of turning your cries into prayers. What are the burdens you need to lift up to God right now? What are the moments where you can choose to trust His unfailing love, even when it seems like He's silent? And here's something to ponder: have you experienced a time when you felt abandoned, only to later realize that God was working behind the scenes, preparing something greater for you? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Your testimony could be the encouragement someone else needs today. Let's keep this conversation going, friends. Dive deeper into your faith, embrace the journey, and never stop seeking His face. Because in the end, it's not just about the answers we receive, but the faith we build along the way. Stay blessed and always remember, in every season, you have a divine refuge. Until next time, keep praying, keep believing, and keep shining your light.